Okay, so thanks so much for joining today's session. I'm Christy Sadler. I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. Let me know in the chat if you're having any problems, and feel free to use that chat as much as you need to if you have questions. I'll try my best to get to questions as we go throughout. I'll take a pause and read if anybody has anything that they've added to the chat. But if I miss your question, I'll just send you an email afterwards. I think I've got everybody's email address. So I really appreciate you being here. Thank you. And I anticipate we'll get people sort of coming in and out. I know everybody's busy, and it is a Saturday morning for me here in my time zone. It's 10 a.m. So, if you have to rush off, no problem. We're going to send the recording to everyone as well. But I'd love if you could stay and participate and join us. I'm going to show you a little cheat that I have going on in the background, and also just to serve as a agenda for what we're going to talk about for the next little bit. So let me just move over here. And I should mention too, I'm doing this from my house. So if there's any background noise, I do have a dog, I've got a cat, they might bug us. And I'm also in a townhouse, so I've got people on both sides. So hopefully the background noise isn't too distracting. But this is it. This is the agenda for today. So I'm going to do a little bit of an intro of myself, tell you what my journey was and why I'm giving a webinar today on sustainable meal planning. And we're going to talk about what sustainable eating is, some various concepts, and what the impacts have been from the way we currently eat. Then we'll go through meal planning. So really, what is the structure of putting together an effective meal plan? And then the actions that you can take to make that meal plan more sustainable and climate friendly. And then we're going to talk about meal prepping, because that can really be your best friend for anybody who has done meal prepping. It can be an absolute lifesaver. And then I did just want to start off by saying that, everybody's journey is going to be different. Some people are plant-based eaters. Some people are omnivores. Some people don't want to eat meat. Some people want to eat meat. Everybody's different, and everybody is at a different stage. And it's really hard to change anything you're doing if you try and do everything all at once. So in order to make effective habits, what you want to do is start small. Just pick those things that you think that you can accomplish. And I've got a cheat sheet that I'll share as well. And then turn those into habits by doing those small things for an extended amount of time, and then incorporate something new. And the most important part is just celebrating the successes that you have. So, if you have a really big win, if you're, made a great plant-based meal that replaced one of your higher impact meals, then, celebrate that success, run with that meal for a little while. I think that's really important. All right, so I'm going to turn back over here so you don't have to stare at my fridge. And so I can see the agenda too. All right. So again, as I mentioned before, I know there's a couple other people that have dropped in since we started. Feel free to put anything in the chat. If there's any information that seems a little unclear, feel free to ask. Or if you have some specialized knowledge that you want to share, feel free to share it. I don't consider myself, the knower of all. So please feel free to share if you have some knowledge that you think that the group could benefit from. The other thing I'm going to say is we are talking about, healthier ways to eat as well. But I want to mention that I'm not a nutritionist. So, if you really want a guide from a nutritionist, go see your doctor, or book an appointment with your dietitian or nutritionist, whatever your preference is. So let's jump in and get started. So a little bit about me and my journey. I am the CEO and co-founder of Zesty Plan, which is a meal planning app. We're not going to talk about the meal planning app in particular today, although I will talk throughout the process about how I use the app. But you might have your own tool that you want to use for meal planning, and this webinar is going to be applicable to you regardless of whether you have the app or not. And the reason that I actually built this app with my co-founder, is that I had this long history of trying to plan out meals for my family. And as a blended family, there are 6 of us in our household. So when we're all here, it can be a little bit crazy. And everybody also has different eating styles. And I know that probably resonates with a bunch of you on the session, because it's quite common now in households to have some people who are plant-based, some people who are omnivores, maybe some people are gluten-free or dairy-free. There's just all sorts of different preferences and needs that people have when it comes to eating. And food is such an important part of our lives and our connection with others. So making sure that doesn't become a source of stress for us is super important, and meal planning can help do that. Anyways, so I had this, stressful inability to effectively plan meals with a busy household. And I feel like I spent a lot of time, even with the meals that I was making, it was just convenience food. I was buying what was the most convenient, and not really paying attention to the planetary impact of what those decisions were resulting in. And then I was working full time, and as a marketing executive, that's my background, been about 20 years in marketing. And when I had switched from my last role, I decided that I wanted to work in climate. I had done a lot of learning over the course of the last few years and understood how much of a bad spot that we're in right now in terms of our levels of emissions. And, I'm sure many of you know the problems that we have on the environmental side. So I really wanted to move into the environmental side. And then I started thinking about my passions and what is it that's going to make me want to work day and night. And I love food. I love cooking for my family. And I really wanted other people to also be able to have the experience that I was having, but much smoother in the meal planning process. And with that, pulling in some education and tools so that people could make climate-friendly decisions, because I still found that convenience kept winning for me because I didn't have all of the answers. And I don't have all of the answers today, but what I do have is enough knowledge to make decisions as I go throughout my day, because we make decisions about what we eat, several times a day, obviously, and just to make those decisions in a more climate-friendly way. So I hope you find this webinar helpful, and please jump in, as I said, at any point in the chat. I would love to hear any of your comments, or we'd all love to learn from anybody who wants to share their expertise or experience as well. All right, so we're going to start off talking a little bit about what sustainable eating is, because everybody's going to have a different definition of sustainable eating. I'll tell you what mine is. Feel free to put something in the chat if you have like some perception of what sustainable eating means. But for me, it is, eating and meal planning in a way that has the lowest impact on the climate that I can manage at our stage. And as I said at the beginning, everybody's going to be in a different phase, but it includes the eating, the shopping, what you're carrying your groceries home in, right? All aspects of food, the fact that we waste food as well. So those all factor into sustainable eating. And I'm going to talk about 4 concepts. The first is regenerative agriculture. And I don't know how many people are familiar with regenerative agriculture. Feel free to put your hand up if you are. But regenerative agriculture is a system or a type of agriculture, farming, that respects the soil. So the idea is that we make sure that the soil is healthy, because the soil plays such a huge part in capturing carbon out of the atmosphere. And what's happened over the years is, because we haven't been using practices that respect and regenerate the soil, that's the easiest way to remember it, there are what you'd call it's desertification. So pieces of land, large swaths of land that essentially are abandoned. So people will have grown one type of crop on that land, and over a number of years, if it's a monoculture, so one type of crop, all of the nutrients get sucked out of the soil and it just leaves dirt. And then the person or the farmer has to find a new piece of land to be able to farm if they're going to do monoculture. There's also tilling, and there's a lot more that's involved, but every time that we till that land, it further degrades it. So most of the carbon that's sequestered in soil is captured in that top level, and every time we till the soil, that's released into the atmosphere. And what we want is more what's called carbon sinks, more ways to suck carbon out of the atmosphere. It's important to know for regenerative agriculture because it's a very big initiative now. There are lots of people who are transitioning to regenerative farms, and it actually can improve crop yields. And as consumers, if we can buy things from regenerative farms, then we are helping to support and demand more of the regenerative farmers. So, you know, if we're purchasing from those types of farms, then more of those farms will show up. It's the supply and demand equation there. So regenerative farming, it's really interesting. If you've ever seen the movie, there's one called Kiss the Ground. It's on Netflix, really great. And it talks specifically about regenerative agriculture and what's happened to our earth. It's a really good watch. Anyway, so concept that's important to know, and you know, when it comes up, hopefully you're armed with, yes, I would like to buy this piece because it says that or this piece of fruit or vegetables, or there are meats on regenerative farms as well, because it is from that source. The other thing I wanted to talk about is upcycled foods. So upcycled foods are foods that are made with byproducts of other foods. So foods that through the manufacturing process have a lot of waste, and we waste a ton of food. So it's like, you know, upwards of 30% of the food that is produced in the world is actually thrown out. And some of that happens because of the process through which end products are made. So if you think about juices, maybe there's like pulp and peel and stuff like that that are thrown away. There are many companies out there now who are making delicious products out of upcycled food. So surplus food that would have been thrown away. Byproducts of beer making is one that we've seen a lot of. There's also pet foods that are made from upcycled foods, but that's something to watch for. There is an Upcycled Foods Association as well that certifies these products in North America. So watch for those. But if you do see an upcycled food, a lot of them come in the form of snacks. So if you're looking for great snacks, look for upcycled foods. So another key concept there. The other thing that we want to talk about is conscious consumption. And conscious consumption is the process of when you're eating or when you're making your food, just really being aware of what it is and where that food came from. And the fact that, you know, whether it's in a package when you get it or whether you're just taking it, you know, you've taken it from the farmer's market, there has been so much work, land, water, labor, love that has gone into producing that food. So when you're eating it, you're eating all of those various inputs that have gone into the delicious food that you're consuming. And just also, you know, taking time. So we're not eating so fast, we're slowing down, we're being very aware of the food that we have and what it took to come to be where it is on our plate. So key concepts as we think about sustainable eating. The last thing we're going to talk about is the impacts that have brought us to where we are to date. So I talked a little bit about the problem with soil. The other problem that we have is specific to animal agriculture when it comes to sustainable eating. And the biggest problem with animal agriculture is the amount of land that it takes, aside from animal welfare, that it can be issues in factory farms. But the amount of land that is used for for livestock, and not just the land that's required for them, to live on until they're taken to slaughter. It's the additional land that we use to produce food for them to eat, so that we can consume them. And I think there's a stat, it's enormous. It's something like 70% of the farmland is used for animal agriculture and the food that has to be produced for those animals. And it's just not sustainable. Like, there's just no way we'll be able to continue, North Americans in particular, will be able to continue to eat meat at the rates that we are now. It's just not, no, it won't, the earth won't support it. The population growth is too big, and we just consume an abundance of meat in comparison to many other countries and or many other regions in the world. And I think that there's a stat, there's a website called, I think it's Overshoot, and it talks about the number of planet Earths that would be required to feed the world or support the world if everyone consumed like we do. And I think the number, in particular for the US, they don't have it for Canada, I'm based out of Canada, but for the US is 5. So if everyone in the world lived the same way that people in the US live, which is probably fairly similar to Canada, we would need 5 Earths to support the current population. So just something to think about. Like, we need to change our consumption, and it's going to come in some form. It's either there's going to be probably government regulations. Industry will change too. There's lots of great innovation happening in industry, and agriculture is changing. Like I talked with the regenerative agriculture. So lots of great stuff happening. But the biggest thing that we can do as consumers is change our behaviors, change, what we eat, how we shop, how we meal plan. And that's what we're going to go through for the rest of this session, is talking through that meal planning and looking at the actions that we can take. And I said at the beginning of the webinar, I know quite a few people have joined since we started, but this isn't a, watch this video and then change everything you do tomorrow. That's, it's a recipe for giving up. People say that habits form over a long period of time of making small changes. So I've got a cheat sheet for sustainable eating that I'll be sharing as well, that should help to show you that, you can take those little small changes, do them over time, and maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years, but hopefully by the end of it, you've been able to incorporate some of the practices that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so I'm going to show you again where we are at here on my cheat sheet. So we've talked a little bit about sustainable eating, introduced myself. We're going to go into meal planning, and we're going to talk about actions at the same time. And I did mention that, I've got, we are a climate-friendly meal planning app, Zesty Plan. And I will show you just a couple of things, or I'll pause and tell you a couple of things that I would use the app for, if you're able to use the app, or if that's one of the things that, if you're an app friendly person. Some people much prefer spreadsheets or chalkboards or calendars. There's many different ways that you can go ahead and meal plan. So choose whatever is best for you. I landed on an app because I had used spreadsheets, and there just wasn't a great way to save recipes, to remember what I had done on a particular week and repeat it. So I really like the app for being able to do that, to save my favorites. I can get my family to collaborate with me, and they can rate any of the recipes or meals that I make, just so that I've got that top of mind. Okay, so the important parts of meal planning. So starting off with what you've got on the go, right? So what is going on for the week, whether it's yourself or if you're planning for your family, there's going to be evenings where you've got something on the go. Maybe you've got ballet or hockey, or you have some classes that you're taking yourselves, or you've got a business meeting, whatever the case may be, there will be evenings that you're gonna want to flag as this is the evening that I need a quick meal, or if you're typically the person that cooks and you won't be there, then you need to arrange for the meal. It's just like really important to plan out your schedule. I'm going to show you a template in a minute of a meal plan in a spreadsheet. It's my old spreadsheet. And I'll share that. I'll be sharing that with you as well. That has links to all of the recipes. That's where the 7-day meal plans are that I'm going to be sharing in the session. So you look at what's on the schedule, plan that out, and then the first place to start, especially when you want to make sure that you are minimizing the amount of food waste. The stat on food waste for the average household is that by eliminating like preventable food waste within your home, you can save about $1,800 a year. So it's not insignificant, right? And it's just making sure that you're using all of your odds and ends. You're making sure that you're not letting things go bad in the fridge. And one of the best ways to not let things go bad in the fridge is starting your meal planning process with what's in my fridge, which is a fun thing that we can do in Zesty Plan. So I know many of you have likely used AI, generative AI before. We have a functionality within Zesty Plan where we can just take a picture of what's in the fridge and it'll create a recipe. So that's super helpful for coming up with something when you've got like a mix mash of different things that might be perishing. So it's taking that moment before you start your meal plan, create a recipe if you can, and maybe if you do your meal planning on Sunday, and this is one of the important aspects as well, is really choosing a day that you're going to do your meal planning on. That's how you establish habits, right? Is really, making sure that it's scheduled. The other thing that is important for habit forming, and a really great book on the topic is Atomic Habits. So Atomic Habits, one of the things that they recommend is when you're starting a new habit is nestling it up against something that you already do. So if on Sundays you have a regular activity, maybe it's planning out your work week, or maybe you go to church on Sundays, or maybe you go to the gym on Sundays or whatnot. Maybe you can take the, hour before, hour after, and just wedge in your new habit of meal planning. Okay, so what's on the schedule, what's in the fridge, and then, start off with that recipe with what's in your fridge, see what else needs to be dealt with. So maybe you're not going to be able to use everything up that is potentially going bad right then, but it's really important to take the moment and do something with everything that needs help in your fridge. So you have that first recipe. Say there's a couple of other things that are really on their last legs. They can slip into the freezer most likely, or vegetables that are going bad. Really great way to help those out is pickling. I pickled some cauliflower the other day and added it to some really nice tacos. And pickling can be super easy if you do a quick pickle, not one that you're spending a lot of time on the stove and doing the proper sealing and stuff like that. Like just a regular pickle where you might expect the pickles to last a couple of weeks, and that's just really equal parts vinegar and water, a little bit of sugar, and some people do more sugar. I prefer less, and some salt, and heat it up, pour it over whatever you're trying to pickle. So that's a great way to save other things that are going bad in your fridge. So once you've dealt with what's in your fridge, then it's time to check your pantry, because there will be some staples that you typically order every week. So have a look at that pantry. Maybe some of those items would get incorporated already in that first recipe that you made, or maybe it's just for the knowledge that, you need to replenish your chickpeas because you use chickpeas a lot or whatnot. So just having a look in the fridge, look in the pantry, this is what we've got on hand. Now let's get down to the meal planning part of it. So the next thing that you want to do is scheduling your favorites. So you probably have things that you do every week. So either favorite recipes or favorite things to do. Maybe you do Friday night pizza, maybe you do Monday night chicken wings, whatever the case may be. The things that you do on a regular basis, get those in there first. And then you're going to have a good idea of actually how much planning that you have to do, right? So maybe there's maybe there's a date night, or maybe you're having friends over. So just making sure that those are all within your calendar, and then taking the favorite recipe and plopping it in there on the night that you need it, looking also at the activity night or the activities that are happening so that you are matching how much effort is in the recipe with how much time you have available. So the other thing that you'll want to think about, so I mostly just plan dinners because I have a really good idea already of what I'm doing at lunches and breakfasts. But if you need to plan out maybe you've got a big family, you might need to plan out those lunches and breakfasts as well. So decide what you want to include in that meal plan is really important. Let me just pause, see if we don't have any questions coming in, nothing in the Q&A. All right, thanks. Let's just keep going. So yeah, one of the things that is a really great for meal planning, particularly for breakfasts and lunches, doesn't work as well for dinner because usually people like a unique meal at dinner, but repeat as often as you can for lunches and breakfasts. One way is when you are making your meals at night is actually doubling that recipe if you know that you could have that for lunch for the rest of the week, or just coming up with a lunch that you can make multiple of. So I personally do salad jars, and it's just like really easy. This part of my meal prep on Sundays is I'll come up with however many salads I need. I'll also make them for my partner. And then I just layer on all of the stuff that I need to know that is in there. So, my edamame, I might have some other protein sources. Maybe I've got some quinoa in there. I'll have layers of tomato, cucumber. There could be some zucchini. Again, another way to use up with what's in your fridge. The only thing to think about is if you've got something that's starting to perish in your fridge, you probably don't want to put it in your salad jar just because by, the next day, unless you number them, this one I'm going to use tomorrow. Anyway, so you just layer those jars with the most delicate things on top, the most hearty things on the bottom. A lot of people put a dressing in the bottom. I make my dressing and keep it on the side. And that's mostly because I find if I put it in the jar, it actually makes everything stick to the jar and I don't get as much out of the jar. So I just make the dressing and put it on the side. But anyways, salad jars are amazing. And then if you do a soup or something like that, that can be a repeater as well. So soup with a nice sourdough. That's actually in the meal plan that I'm going to provide for you. We do 5 days. I do 3 days of the salad jars and 2 days of a soup. And essentially that takes the planning out of the equation for my lunches. And same thing with breakfasts. And I know a lot of people do eat this way, right? So you'll just, if you've got a family, maybe you're throwing down whatever cereal or toast or whatnot is available there. And then you'll plan out pretty much the same breakfasts. In the meal plan that I'm providing for you, I've got 3 days of chia pudding and 2 days of protein berry bowls. So simple, easy, and then just don't forget your snacks when you're meal planning as well. It's an easy way to get off track, especially if you're doing it for health and trying to limit what you're eating and reducing the amount of processed food that you're having, and meal prepping is a great way to get those snacks ready. So the other thing that you'll want to do is actually collaborate with your family as much as you can, particularly when you've got younger kids. Getting them involved in the meal planning process really helps to make sure that they'll actually eat that food. That was one of the challenges I really had when my kids were younger. I'd find it so frustrating because I'd put food on the table and it would get refused. And, I'd probably end up having it for lunch the next day, but I had a child who would actually gag. So it's not like I could just, not feed them. So I'd end up making 2 dinners, right? So, but if you get your kids involved in that process, and even helping with making some of the meal, which can be fun for them, that can really help to make sure that everything that you make gets consumed, and developing those good habits when they're young is obviously super, super important, something that I wish as a mom I did a better job with my kids at. But, you know, when you're busy, it's hard. So now let's talk a little bit about building that climate-friendly shopping list. Because if you put together that week of meals and you have some knowledge of some of the things that we've talked about already, so you know that animal agriculture has a huge impact. I'm going to show you just in a minute what the pecking order is of impact for various meat sources, and that should be helpful in selecting a more sustainable choice. So if you want to go through and put that shopping list together, the things that you're thinking about are the lower impact on the animal if you are an omnivore, and then also think about the packaging that the various products are coming in. One of the best ways that you can have a lower impact on the environment, and also it's good for your health usually, is just looking for lower levels of processing. So, you know, the less processed something is, very generally, the more healthy it is. You know, you want to see less additives, less preservatives. And it might mean that you have to shop twice during the week, but because you've got your meal plan, it's almost like you've got your process that you need to follow. Within Zesty Plan, we actually allow that collaboration and sharing, and we also have some sustainable suggestions. Let me just show you right now that I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to have a look at this this image right here. So this is the impact of various food sources. I'm going to try and zoom in for you because I'm guessing that might be a little small for folks. There we go. You can see a little bit better here. Whoops. But you can see here. So beef is the highest impact meat. So the more you can decide to lean away from beef in your meal plan, the better it is for sustainability. So if you look at beef here up at 99.5 kilograms of greenhouse gas emissions, compared to, let's find it down here. There we go. The poultry, which is almost at 10, like there's a 90% less impact on the environment if you're to choose poultry versus beef. And I know lots of people love beef. So maybe, you know, you're not at the stage where you're like ready to give up beef. But looking at your meal plan and saying, you know what, I have 4 beef meals. Maybe I've got chili, I've got meatballs, I've got a steak. You can decide to take some of those ones that you could swap something out for, like chicken and meatballs is fine, or chicken and a chili, or lentils, which would be much lower and also cheaper. You can go ahead and make those substitutions. So just, you know, something to think about there on what the various meats are. So again, just like focusing in on this chart here, and this is from the website Our World in Data, and there's a bunch of different, you can see here on the left, there's a bunch of different items that you could go through and decide if you'd like to see what the CO2 impact of those are. Just looking down here on the left, so it goes beef, lamb, and then dairy is a big impact as well, because you'll see it combined here a couple of times. There's dairy beef, and then there's cheese. So you just want to make sure, like, honestly, I know it can be painful for some people. It was for me. I eat plant-based, actually. I haven't my whole life, but just for the last 3 years, I switched to a plant-based meal. My family isn't all, though. Myself and my partner are, and then we've got 4 kids in the household who are omnivores. So we're always trying to reduce that cheese. So the amount that you can reduce beef and cheese, if you can only do that to start, that would have a huge impact, because those are 2 of the biggest impact foods. So sorry if that hurts anyone, because I know those are well-loved foods. I find cheese particularly hard to give up, but it's necessary if you want to eat a more sustainable meal or a way of eating. We actually have found cheese sauces and stuff like that that are made with soaked cashews are a really great replacement. And some of the things that you'll hear, and I know this can be quite confusing because you'll hear lots of conflicting information about what is sustainable and what isn't sustainable. And you'll read that cashews actually consume a fair amount of water, or you need a fair amount of water for cashews, which is true, but it is so much smaller than is required for dairy. So the difference is, you know, if you're going to go from having dairy cheese and you'd like to try some of the cashew cheeses, even some of the purchased cashew cheeses are quite nice, but it's super easy to make a cashew cheese sauce at home. Honestly, you can do it 10 minutes. Just because you need to soak the cashews. That's the only thing that takes 10 minutes. You just throw it in the blender. So it's really cashews, soaked cashews, lemon, a little bit of salt, and water. And it just makes a nice sauce. And then you can add in anything that you like. I add in sriracha for like a bit of a hot sauce. And you can add in any other flavors that you want to. Sometimes you'll add in a mustard or something like that. But anyways, just an option for those of you who are considering trying some of the made at home cheeses. So yes, eat less meat, eat less dairy. We're building our sustainable grocery list now. So trying to think of, you know, what we can, and we're doing it while we're doing the meal plan, right? So we're not at the grocery store. You're looking at the meals that you've put in your meal plan and thinking about, you know, is it possible for me to change some of these recipes so that they are more climate friendly? And let's add those items to the grocery list. So eat less meat, eat less dairy. Buying local is quite helpful. But transportation is actually one of the lower impacts or the lower contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, but still important. And also we want to buy local to support our local farmers, our local shopkeepers, right? Super important. Less processed food. If any of you follow Michael Pollan, one of the recommendations that he has is shop the outside of the grocery store. So most of what you'll find in the inner aisles is the more processed stuff. So stay to the outside. Look for minimal packaging. I know that this might sound crazy, but look at that expiring food rack. That's also going to save you money. But if you look at that expiring food rack, that's perfectly good food. Sometimes just come home and throw it into the freezer, and you are, you know, you're really doing well for yourself money wise, because, you know, you might be saving 50% off some perishing fruits, vegetables, and meats. And you're doing well for the planet, because if you don't buy that, you know, your neighbor doesn't buy it, if nobody buys it, it just gets wasted, right? It ends up being part of that 30% of food globally that we waste. So, you know, it's good for the pocketbook, good for the planet, and just keep in your mind, you know, I can just bring this home and freeze it. So good that way. The one thing I want to do is jump into the meal plan that you're going to get a copy of, and we can just have a look at the dinners that were provided in there. So let's jump over here, and I'm going to share my screen again. And I've got a snapshot of it here. This is the plant-based version. What I am going to tell you is, so there's an omnivore version as well that you'll get. It's not a lot different. So one of the things that you've probably heard this recommendation as well is one of the best ways to eat is the Mediterranean diet. And the really strong benefit of the Mediterranean diet is it's also quite good for the planet. So it's like lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, whole grains, pulses, beans, all that sort of stuff, limited meat. It's mostly vegetarian, I would say. So anyways, this is the plant-based meal plan that I'm providing you. And in the omnivore version, I've changed 2 of the evening meals. So, and that's mostly because I'm putting it in there as a omnivore Mediterranean style meal plan. But feel free to take this meal plan template that I'll provide you with and just use it and modify it as you need to. These are all of the like links that you can see here. Those are linked to recipes on the Zesty Plan website. And this just gives you all of the options for, the various snacks, lunches, dinners, breakfasts. I made some of the bigger meals sit on the weekends, things that might take a little bit more time and that you want to take a little bit more time to do, but you can move them around as much as you want. I don't find that tofu scramble takes too long. It is absolutely delicious, by the way. It is so good. And if you're an egg eater, like it would still be great with eggs as well. We just happen to do it with tofu in our household. And then here's the salad jar. I don't have a recipe for the salad jar in here right now, but I'll be putting one up on the website within the next week. So if you're subscribed to our newsletter, you'll get a notification that recipe is available. And the peanut dressing, it's all really, really easy, to be truthful. So once you have that recipe, once we have that recipe up on the website, I'll let you know. And so I'm just going to go through some of these dinners here. So what I did is I paired the easy dinners with evenings where I have something on the go. So say on Wednesday, that lentil shepherd's pie isn't the quickest meal, but I had made it another day and I've got some in the freezer. So one of the strategies that is super helpful in making sure that you're able to follow your meal plan is coming up with some of those items where you can put, you can double it and throw something in the freezer. I love having stuff in the freezer, even just, I don't know, maybe if you're like me, I fall off my meal plan. So I'll put it together. And then at the end of the day, I'll be like, I am so tired. I do not feel like doing this particular meal plan. Oh, I guess I went over to the omnivore plan. I don't feel like doing this particular meal. And, maybe I didn't feel like making my plant-based sausage pasta, but if I have something in the freezer, I can just reheat that and that's good to go. So it's like a fail safe having it there. It breaks my heart when I have to, or not when I have to, but when, I feel like there's nothing else that I can do with wanting to be lazy that day other than ordering takeout. So I try my best to make sure that we've got something in the freezer that could easily be reheated. The other thing that's really great in this meal plan is we've included what meal prep needs to happen for the next few days to be successful. So if we're talking about meal prepping, that can be one of the best ways of actually making sure that this meal plan comes to fruition. And it might take an hour and a half on a weekend. So we're getting pretty fast at the meal planning process because I've been doing it for a long time, and you'll hopefully find that cadence as well. But that meal prep, like taking that extra hour and a half on the weekend, or whenever you have time, depending on what your schedule looks like, is a game changer. So here you can see I made, it's not chia pudding, it's chia pudding, but I make the chia pudding in their jars on Sunday, put them in the fridge so that they're good for, we've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that we're doing chia pudding in this meal plan. And then I'm dicing the squash for tomorrow night's risotto, so I don't have to dice anything when I get home. I'm just dealing with, I've got that has frozen peas in it. It's got everything else is pretty much ready to go. I'm going to put together the salad jars, which really takes me about 15 minutes, and the dressing. I'm going to cut veggies because I've put together my snack schedule and I've got veggies and hummus. And you can actually make hummus of your own. It's super fast. It's like tahini, lemon juice, chickpeas, some salt, a little bit of water, and honestly, just right in the Vitamix, and it turns out really, really lovely. But if you want to buy it as well. But again, just constantly trying to think, what can I do that's going to make this meal plan more sustainable? And, not having that packaging is a great way to do that. So that was the meal planning on Sunday, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because I don't want any of the things that I'm prepping to perish, right? So I've set myself up for what I need here. Oh, I know that in that plant-based sausage pasta, oh no, it's got lemons in it. So it's actually in the omnivore one, this spicy sausage and peppers that you'd need to do peppers as well on the meal prep day on Sunday. And that's really nice because now my Monday's free pretty much aside from the actual making of the meals, same for Tuesday and Wednesday, because I've got that freezer dish. And then on Wednesday night, I've saved myself some time because I'm not actually making that. Maybe I'm getting back from hockey at 9 o'clock and I'm going to quickly make the cheese sauce that I need to for the mac and cheese the next day. I'm going to make sure that there's enough veggies for the salad and for my hummus and veggies snacks, and soak the chickpeas overnight. So one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, and I'm just going to stop sharing here so I can show you, is stocking your kitchen so that it's sustainable. And you can see here behind me, so we shop at as much as we can at a local organic bulk place down the street where they sustainably source their lentils. We've got lentils here, split peas, dates. We've got nutritional yeast, which is really yummy. If you've tried nutritional yeast at all, this is one of the things that makes is a plant-based option for a cheesy flavor. So to do a vegan Parmesan, you just mix cashews with some of this nutritional yeast and a little bit of garlic powder and a little bit of salt, blitz it in the blender, and you've got like an alternative for Parmesan cheese. It's delicious. And this is really nice on eggs. I actually like it just on some sourdough toast with some vegan butter. It's so good. Very, very delicious. Anyways, so there's lots of other things you'll see over here. I'm just going to pan over here as well. You can see once you start doing this, like buying from the bulk food store, it just saves so much time. We've got like cranberries and raisins. We've got hemp seeds, peanuts. I make my own peanut butter, which is super easy. You just throw peanuts in a blender. We don't add anything to it. Some people like to add stuff to it, but you just have to monitor it because it'll go up on the sides, and just it takes probably 3 or 4 minutes and you've got your delicious peanut butter. And we do that macaroni recipe. So I always have a lot of that macaroni. This is almost running out. It's oatmeal because people eat a lot of oatmeal in this house. But this is like, it looks nice and organized, and it's everything that we do with our sort of regular snacking, and supports all of the plant-based eating that we do. The other thing that I'll point out here let's see if I can just turn off that light and you can see what's going on over here a little better. So I've got a hydroponic garden that I just started working on. So one of the things that I want to do, and again, you don't want to try and do everything at once. I've been trying to eat this way now for several years. But I just started this year. I really want to try and get better at growing my own food. So we did last year some tomatoes. We had peppers and hot peppers that worked out really well. So we're in a small townhouse, well, medium-sized townhouse in Toronto. I got a small backyard, so not a lot of space. And we just want to make sure that if we can, we're learning how to grow our food. So we're starting here now. We've got lettuce that is delicious. So I put this, I can use this for salads, and I put it on some tacos the other day. I've got some basil, some dill, cilantro. This is a light that fell off. It like sits underneath here. So we've got these are indoor grow lights. The system, the hydroponic system, and I think we got this from Amazon, which probably isn't the most sustainable thing to do. You can probably get them secondhand, but it's really honestly, you wouldn't even believe how fast this grows. So just another idea for trying another sustainable option for producing your food. The other thing that I'll point out, you can see it right here, which might look a little. Well, it looks not too bad, but I bought a countertop composter called Lomi. And there's different companies that have these as well now, but just so I can stop all of the compost that I'm putting to the curb, we're super lucky here in Toronto that we have a composting system that is managed by the city. But I also have, I mentioned that I'm trying to grow food in the backyard. We also have lots of plants in the backyard. And this makes great compost, and I use the Lomi to do that. So it takes a really nice, slow process, and there's great compost that comes out the back of it. Again, whatever you can do to change it, make any of the changes that are possible for you. So that's just another option. So buying in bulk helps with the minimal packaging, so reduces plastics. I use jars that I've bought other stuff in. So a lot of the jars that I have are from old spaghetti sauce jars, and they work perfect. So they work perfect. I head over to the bulk store, and the particular one that we have in this area, we're in Leslieville in Toronto. The owner that's there and all the staff is very knowledgeable about the food and where it's sourced from, and you can get lots of information. So I'd encourage you to do that. So I'm just looking at my list and trying to think through what we have covered and what we haven't. So let's just go back over here. I always have to tip this a little bit so we can have a look at it. So the only other thing, so when we're talking about actions, so we talked about eating less meat, eating less dairy, buying local, buying in bulk, less processed food. Because you think about the processing, I didn't mention this before, and it's just the more steps that there are in the process, aside from it's better for us, for our health, if we have less processed food, but it's better for the environment as well, because every step in the processing releases more emissions. So if there's, the packaging process, the creation of the product, if it's, got multiple ingredients in it, that's happening in a factory. So the more it's processed, the more impact or CO2 impact there is by the expiring food. So the compost challenge is one of the things that we did. Actually, Zesty Plan offered it as a corporate challenge as well. We had a couple of people take part in it, a couple of companies. And what we did was try and get people to reduce the amount of compost they produce from their house. So going to the curb, to their either, like, not everybody has local composting, but just trying to reduce it by 50%. And save that $1,800 a year that we throw out, essentially. Another tip on that front is if there are vegetable scraps that you are thinking of throwing out, you can actually use those to make a great vegetable stock. So you can also freeze that if you end up with too much of it, but that's a great option for using up scraps. But that compost challenge, it's again, that's part of that conscious consumption, right? Just thinking of that food that you've got. Cauliflower is a really good one too, because a lot of people don't use the leaves in the cauliflower, and there's all sorts of crumbly bits that come off. Those cauliflower leaves can be eaten. They're great. So can the leaves from the celery, and they're great for garnishing too. So just think of like trying to use absolutely every piece, particularly of produce that you have. So that's one of the great ways that you can, really try and consume everything as opposed to composting. If you are eliminating, throwing stuff out, composting is going to be great. You can compost in your backyard. You can use a countertop compost, but the best thing is actually consuming all of that compostable material if you can. So thinking, do I really need to throw out this end of the zucchini, or can that go into my soup as well? Or can we make that part of the stock? So, so that was really talking about the sustainable actions. I'm going to reinforce this: start small, create habits, celebrate your successes. Carving out a regular time, super important for the meal prepping and for the meal planning. And I think that's most of what we wanted to be sure and cover in this webinar. Let me jump back into those slides and just see, I'll show you in terms of starting small, what I was talking about for the cheat sheet. Let's just jump in here And we'll go down. So this is what the cheat sheet looks like. So if you are thinking of, first of all, I thought it would be helpful if you had an area where you could establish your goals, and remembering that starting small is super important. So, maybe you take, like, we're in February right now, but maybe the first thing that you do is incorporate a meatless meal each week. Lots of people are doing meatless Mondays, and you'll see lots of recipes, etc., for meatless Monday as an event on social media. I think there's a hashtag you can follow on Instagram, and lots of, even if you're just, searching it up, you'll be able to see that there's lots of options for meatless Monday or meatless meal. A lot of people are doing that meatless Monday. And but if Monday doesn't work for you, it could be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever. The important part is just trying to get familiar with cooking with less meat, because regardless of which type of animal is going into your meal, the truth of it is that we need to reduce the amount of meat that we eat overall to be able to sustain life on this planet. And so looking for that as like a first step could be one of them. But there's also all of these other initiatives, and it'll work for your family and what'll be accepted in your family. So choosing one of those initiatives is a great place to start. So you can put down your goals. So if your goal, maybe you got a goal that is salt reduction, maybe it's more health related than sustainable, put those goals down as well, because that'll help you when you're building out that meal plan. But also just making sure, is your goal just to, make small gains, which is usually the way that we breed great habits. It's just those small changes, as I talked about before, tucking them up against something else that we're already doing is super important. And then adding sequentially more and more to it, but not doing it all at once, because that's, they talk about most diets failing because people actually, it's too much of a change. This is one of the problems that I had when I originally started meal planning, was a lot of the meal planning apps that I was introduced to, they actually gave you a week of meals, and I found that super not only stressful but challenging, because it was a big week of meals that I'd never made before, and I didn't even know if they worked for my family. So when it comes to meal planning, as much as it might feel great to just even grabbing the meal plan that I've put together for you, take it and make sure that you adapt it so that it works for your family. So if you think that you would have any, difficulty getting your family on board, or your household, if you're not, if you're a single person, or maybe you're living with a roommate, just making sure that you have adapted the meal plan so that you're going to feel good, right? There's nothing worse than putting together this meal plan, doing all of the shopping, putting together, thoughtfulness and conscious ideas about how you're going to make your meal plan more sustainable, and then having your family or your household not 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 enjoying it. So yeah, just make sure that it's really customized for your family. So I hope that this has been helpful. There's a survey on the way out of the webinar, so I'd love it if you could just take a moment and fill out that survey. Give me some feedback about how the webinar was, if it met your expectations. If you were expecting something totally different, please let me know. That's super helpful in letting us create new webinars. If you are interested in the Zesty Plan app, please go to the Zesty Plan website and download it. We've got links where you can just go directly to the Play Store or the App Store as well, and grab it. And we are a startup. We've got lots of great functionality that'll be coming out. One of the things that I was going to mention as well, when it does come to sustainable eating, it's something I've been thinking about for quite a while, is, when we're looking at those nutritional labels, there's lots of information on there. One of the things that I think would be great for us to get a lot more familiar with is our CO2 impact. So, that might be a little bit pie in the sky for now, but, something to think about. So there's, on a weekly basis, we make decisions about the climate impact our food has whatever, 6 times a day. And to know off the top of our head that, this choice that I made to have lentils in the shepherd's pie instead of beef or lamb, which are the two most common options, cut my CO2 impact by 90%. Like that knowledge, I think, is just super powerful. Anyways, I went off on a little tangent there, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know it's Saturday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Please give me some feedback about the webinar. If you enjoyed it, if you would share it with others, or if you really wish that I had followed a different format, everything is helpful. Really open to all your feedback. So thanks very much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend and happy meal planning.